Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self Connection with Ginny Brown and Kelly Pietro, where we have conversations with a group of ascended masters known as the multitude of the greater good.
Yes, this group is, they are, as Kelly said, ascended masters. They are in spirit. They are healers and teachers. And they have access to information from the day of creation to the present time. And also including those things that each of you are interested in accomplishing in this lifetime. So Kelly will be the question asker, and I will channel the answers. And we'll see what happens. We never know what's going to happen. We never know what they're going to say or information that they're going to share with us.
And even Ginny doesn't know what we're going to talk about today. So I usually come up with a topic and I don't always share it with her so that it kind of comes through very purely, I guess.
True.
So today, Ginny, the topic I chose is undue influence. And so when I think about that term, I think it's pertinent to today, but you can go back in history and think about where individuals have been highly influenced by their communities or groups that they're a part of, religious organizations, like I think about cults. But in today's day and age with the internet and algorithms of social media, there's all this confirmation bias and you keep getting the same message over and over again. And so while there may not be like a central organized means of undue influence, it can kind of still fall in that category, right? Where someone is being influenced heavily by repetitive messaging and maybe across multiple channels or multiple people, multiple individuals or organizations. And it's I have a hunch, I guess, that it is what is creating a lot of divisive energy these days. And so my question for the multitude is, let's see, how do I want to phrase it? What is the spiritual purpose of this undue influence experience that humanity is having right now?
It is important to understand, my dear, that when each one comes to the earth plane, each one chooses that which is right for each one. We can tell you there are many influences in many different ways, and most are like inopportune or most incorporate those parts of selves that are wishing to learn. If one chooses to follow some sort of development here or there, it is a matter of understanding that there is some learning required on that level of their being. If it is that one chooses to listen to all of these different places and spaces and understand that there is only one right way for them, and that is in their inner self, their inner knowing, then they will begin to understand whether or not they resonate, whether or not it is right for them. And if it is right for them, they will continue along that path. When one comes to understand who one is in a higher and greater way, one will choose a different path, one that resonates on a higher level with oneself. Therefore, we would highly recommend that you not be so concerned about all of the different areas, as each one's inner self knows what is right for each one. When one allows oneself and the all that is to step in, it is important to understand that one has incorporated a part of self that is requiring expansion of love, expansion of care, expansion of understanding, and in and within one's knowing, one knows how to proceed. If one chooses a different direction, one will eventually come to that part of self that says, okay, this is right for me. This is not right for me. This is where I need to be. This is where I want to go. 90% of this information is incorporated on the spiritual level, as each one's spiritual self or super self, so to speak, is very much in charge of the one on the earth plane. Therefore, it is most important that the one on the earth plane be in connection with their super self on the spiritual plane. And when one is in that connection, one is able to discern much more easily that which is right for one. We would highly recommend that each one take the opportunity to look into one's heart self, to understand who one is, what one wants, and how it is to be. In our estimation, each one in this situation of knowing, will understand what is right. In our estimation, there are a great many influences for each one. Therefore, it is the most important for each one to understand within their heartfelt sense of self that which is right for each one. Do not be concerned. All is love.
Thank you. I feel like I want to unpack that a little bit for our listeners.
Okay.
At least, well, and I almost feel like it's not even necessary, but I'm gonna share my interpretation of that. Is like I'm getting mixed messages if I should even share it, but I'm gonna go ahead. It feels like there's a caveat afterwards, but like there's the spiritual self, right? The part of us in spirit that knows exactly what we need and when we need it. And so perhaps the earthbound self, when it chooses to follow an influence of some sort, that their super self is driving that because there's an experience to be had that the soul wishes to experience in order to grow and learn. And that at some point that learning is complete, and like the effort to get out, if you will, is like the earthbound self outgrows the experience because they've learned what their spiritual self set out to learn, and therefore can overcome and kind of move on to the next phase of learning, which could include like maybe another situation of undue influence, or more virtuously choosing the self over that of like group norms. And so what I heard that kind of got me mixed up is like, Kelly, you don't have to share your interpretation because everyone's going to have their own individual interpretation of that channeled message, and to allow each person to have their own interpretation as well. So that's why I was like hesitant, like, oh, I want to unpack that, but like, no, you don't need to. I was like, no, you don't have to unpack it. Let everyone.
Sometimes it helps for clarification because sometimes the language that is used is not easily understandable. And when you begin to explain how you see it, which may not be how another sees it, but someone else may understand it a little differently or hear it where they couldn't hear it with the language that the multitude uses. So yeah. I always think that that's beneficial. But, you know, people also need to understand that that's your interpretation, and they are not only welcome, but obligated to have their own interpretation as well.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I love about working with the multitude is that there's such an honor of the free will and of personal choice and personal path that, they never give like hard and fast details that our human brain sometimes wants, point us in the right direction, tell me exactly what to do. And it's like they honor free will at such a degree that sometimes it's frustrating for the ego because the ego wants concrete answers, but they're
Right.
so good at saying like, you're on your own path and you choose,
Yes.
which I do
Yes,
love.
but they also want you to choose from your heart self, from that feeling self, rather than just the mind self alone. When you work from the feeling self in conjunction with the mind self, then you can become more clear. And it's the feeling self that on the earth plane that will help one understand more of who one is.
I love that you said that because they did talk about that in that channeled message. It's like when choosing your path and choosing what groups to follow or to be involved in, it's like to always tune in and stay connected with your, as they call it, the super self. You know, which is somewhere a different degree of a higher self. Well, maybe one episode we'll get into that a little bit, but yeah, it's like to stay connected with your super self so that you are divinely guided in a way that honors you, the individual, and your chosen path.
Right.
As dictated by the spiritual self. I think that's yeah. And so maybe they can talk about that a little bit, the differentiation between the mind self and the heart self or the feeling self, because to give advice to people on how to connect to that. Like I think you and I, we've worked with it enough where we know, but maybe for those out there listening, what are some concrete ways that they can connect to their super self and receive messages and knowing from that mode of being versus from the thinking mind?
It is important to understand that it is important that one work in conjunction with the other one. It is not an either or situation. However, it is important that the heart self be honored. There are many times one works from the mind self alone, ignoring how one feels about the situation. Therefore, one moves forward in one direction and ignores oneself. It is important to understand that in allowing one's heartfelt feelings is not a cop-out, so to speak. It is honoring oneself, honoring those things that are important to one. When one honors oneself in such a way, then one is free. One is free to make choices. One is free to work with the mind self and choose which direction. It's important. The word I'm hearing is blindly. It is important to allow each one to move forward in conjunction, one with the heart self and the mind self, rather than blindly moving forward from the mind self alone. We would like each one to understand that as each one moves, each one grows, each one's allows, each one will be able to feel those feelings on a higher level. There are those parts of self that one wishes to expand and will expand. However, it begins in the heart self, the feeling self, the honoring of oneself. It is how it works on the earth plane. It is quite perfect indeed. Do not be concerned, all is love.
It makes me think about at least in like in recent years, I almost started really noticing it with the timing of the pandemic, but I think it started happening just before then, how even like spiritual gurus, like you see in the spiritual community or new age community, how like it was like the end of the era of the guru. It felt like the beginning of an era of like, you are your own guru, right? And you started seeing, at least for me, like the people who I had followed and watched, their channels, the languages started changing a lot. Their positions started changing a lot. And for me, the barometer was like, if any of the messaging was disempowering, that was like a signal for me that like this message isn't for me. You know what I mean? Or where it was like very rules based, or you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to be all in. And then I don't know, you also heard in the news about a lot of gurus kind of their fall from grace, like John of God, and people caught in scandalous situations where they were once put on like a pedestal.
Well, I think that it's that part of that self that resonates or doesn't resonate. And as each one grows, then they resonate with different things, because as you said, it falls away because it no longer resonates with them.
Okay, so that brings up a really interesting concept that I'm always playing with, which is I'm having this personal experience, but I see friends who are having their own personal experience, and we're all growing. And so what we resonate with falls away, falls out of our line of sight. But you could also notice like there seems to be like we have our own individual evolutionary growth patterns, process, cycles, right? But humanity also seems to experience in like evolutionary growth.
Right.
And so sometimes, like when I ask the multitude stuff like that, they're very focused on the individual, like, don't be concerned, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, kind of thing. And maybe it's just my ego mind that wants to know, like, is humanity moving into a new evolutionary cycle, a mode of being, and how would they describe that? Because what I sense is like there's massive spiritual awakening happening as brought on by the pandemic, because that was like a worldwide experience. Like never before has humanity experienced something. I'm already hearing like, yes, we have, but something as intense as like a worldwide pandemic where we heard news across different countries and all of that. So I don't know if they caught the question in there, but maybe that's my question is like, well, did they catch the question? Are you feeling an answer come in?
It is important to understand, my dear, that your question is not really a question, it's a statement. And when you are ready to ask the question, we are ready to answer.
Okay.
However, we would like you to understand there are many ways that humanity grows. And the most important way is for the individual to grow. And as each individual grows and expands itself, each one, it's like makes a contribution to the all of humanity.
Okay.
And it is important to understand that humanity is not it's like an entity all its own. It is a conglomeration of each and every other one on the earth plane, doing their part, sharing their growth, sharing their knowledge, and moving themselves along. If it is that one would choose to view humanity as a singular source, it is impossible, as there are many, 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 it's like directives of being involved in, it's like in the whole, the all. In our estimation, it is important that you understand that each one makes a major contribution to all, and each one moves forward at each one's own pace. And as each one grows and moves forward, one allows oneself to expand more and more and more. As it is that you say, there are many more who are interested in expanding themselves. It is truth. There are many more opening themselves up to the energy of their being, and that is truth. In our estimation, it is the way it needs to be. It is also the way to expand humanity, as each one plays its own part in the expansion of being. We would highly recommend that each one focus on each one's own growth and understanding, heartfelt sense of self, and honoring of self, as when one honors oneself, one is able to honor the whole, and all is love.
Good one. I like that.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to add?
No,
Like
not right.
you, Ginny? I feel good about
No,
that.
but I knew they were going to say that each one contributes to the whole. So I
Yeah,
know
and
that's where the focus needs to be, for each one to expand themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard them say that before. Well, though, let me ask this then. So in my experience, I've been playing with the idea of tapping into, let's say, the collective consciousness in order to receive information. And I don't want to say abilities because that sounds very concrete, but I guess there's not really another word. And what I've played with was like, so there's the collective consciousness of the all that is, but then my sense is that there's, like, let's call them sub-collective consciousnesses. So let's say if I were to set the intention to connect with the collective consciousness of herbal healers of love and light, that perhaps I can hone in and just connect to those that fit that category. The souls, the consciousnesses of individuals who've lived lifetimes, or maybe not lived lifetimes, exist in spirit with that, let's call it a category. I guess maybe I'm looking for validation of that. Like, is that a good way well, I already know what you're going to say, and I'm already feeling it come into, maybe not to say good or bad way to connect to energy. Is it a, what's the word I want? Like, is that possible? Is that, I don't want to say good or bad, but is it a possible way to connect to energy in that way?
Well, before I ask them that, my understanding is that each one has lived many lifetimes with many experiences.
Yeah.
So in this lifetime, I'm a channel. And I've done that many times in many lifetimes, but I have also done, say, what you're looking for is to connect with the herbalists and other people who know about those kinds of things. But I've done that in other lifetimes. So there is a part of me that knows. So in my own opinion, I'm not sure how you can separate that out, as each one brings with them all of their experiences, and whether or not they are working in that area in this lifetime. It's all there in the collective consciousness. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so I guess I might be, okay, so let's say you lived a life as an herbalist. I'm currently living a life as an herbalist. I'm sure I lived another life as an herbalist. And in those lifetimes, we've gained experience, knowledge, wisdom.
Right.
That's individual to us. So we can
Yeah.
connect to that easily. But what if in that realm of category, there are other things to learn, experience, know that we've not yet experienced in those lifetimes? Can we connect to all souls in that category to see if there is answers based on what we have not yet experienced? And can we then,
If it is that one wishes to connect in that way, one is able to do so. However, we would highly recommend that one not limit oneself in that way, as there is a great deal more to be learned, a great deal more that has been learned, and a great deal more to, it's like bring them both together.
yeah,
In our estimation, it is important that one understand that it is right to be who one is. It is right to expand oneself in the way one wishes, the way one feels called to. It is also important to understand there is a great deal more information than one can understand on the earth plane, as it is that you are pursuing the category of herbalist in this lifetime. You have done so in other lifetimes, that is correct. However, there is a great deal more information that you have in your spiritual self that is not yet attainable to you. In time, you will access that information, and it will lead you to follow the, I don't know, follow the experience maybe as to what you need to know. However, it is important to understand that there are no limits, and each one is able to access what one needs to access at the time one needs to access it, whether it be from oneself or another. Do not be concerned. All is love.
so as you were channeling that, I felt this massive opening and something dropped in. So I don't
Okay.
know. It feels like, you know how you're always telling me, Ginny, like, don't limit what you connect to, just connect to the all that is. And I've been intentionally doing that more lately.
Yeah.
Because I realized that the limitations I was doing was out of fear. Like, well, I don't want to connect to that energy because, whatever. Judgment that it's bad, right? But something in hearing that message just felt like it unlocked something, and I
That's
don't know.
Yes, we have to allow whatever it is to come into, to be open to all of it. However, I have learned that it's important to set some boundaries as to what you do want to come in and what you don't. Like for me, I only want the highest and greatest truth. I only want of the light. I want accuracy. Those things are important to me. And I don't want to hear what I want to hear. I want to hear the truth. So, for me, it's important to set some boundaries as well.
Yeah, and that's been helpful to hear you say that, because that's now my boundaries. To set those same boundaries. And I feel like so much has shifted since allowing that. Like I feel like more can come through. Right. Like working with a client and just allowing whatever it is that they need to come through, not having to know what it is, but to just keep the intention open to allow for more. Is super beneficial, I think.
Yeah. And then there's trust, because then you can trust that if you have set a boundary that you only want the highest and greatest truth, then you can trust that you're going to get the highest and greatest truth from your guides.
Yeah, so I think this is like a good teaching moment, I feel like, for our viewers to say, to let's say you are interested in connecting to energy in a way to like work with it more, and you have some apprehension because of whatever narrative you were brought up with of what was good or what was bad, um, to like actually sit down and like, kind of connect with your super self and the all that is, with the caveats of what your boundaries are, like what Ginny was saying, the only that which is for my highest and best, only that which is of the light, um, only that which is the truth. And there was something else you said that was really good.
Accuracy.
And I want accuracy. And then to really like, I feel like sometimes designating time to set that intention helps to strengthen the intention. Like you and I are well practiced and we can just say, okay, that's my new intention, and we trust and we move on. But I think, I think about a lot of people who really love ritual and really love prayer, and I think all that ritual and prayer also does is like help to strengthen and focus the intention. And so if that is part of your practice, to make time for that so that you can set the intention, so when you do decide to try to channel or work with energy, you can begin trusting that those boundaries are being met.
It is important for each one to understand that that is one way. There is also another way. And in our estimation, it is how we choose to have each one connect with themselves. Each one just needs to sit quietly, place their feet flat on the floor, allow themselves to imagine they are grounding to the earth plane, imagine themselves to imagine they are connecting to the spiritual plane, and then allow oneself to breathe. Just breathe and allow the connection to happen. As in the breathing, there is the connection. In the feeling and the breathing, that is where the connection takes place. That is how the connection takes place. And that is what is required for each one to allow oneself the luxury of connecting to oneself, to not be concerned, all is love.
I love it. That was great.
Yeah.
A little exercise, a little homework if anyone wants to try it.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, yeah. I think that's good, Jenny. What do you think?
I think that's a good way to end, a good lesson for people to try and see how it is that they feel when they're doing it and how they feel after, whether they feel lighter, whether they feel more connected, whether they just feel more of who they are. I remember someone asked me about one time, if you do this and you do this and you've done this and you've experienced this, and so how does it make you feel? And I remember my answer was, it just makes me feel like more me. It's not about grow. It is about growing, but it's like growing yourself and becoming more of you and who you are. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was more me.
Imagine if everyone could start their day with that. It's a good way to start and end your day, to really remind yourself to connect to you and your truth and yourself. We spend a lot of time kind of putting our energy outside of ourselves to like come back home before bed every night and to wake up setting the intention to be self-centered. That's what I was going to say. That's so funny because that's usually a negative connotation, self-centered, but self and centered.
Yes, that's in centering oneself.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Ginny. Thank you to the multitude.
Thank you,
And
Kelly.
we'll see everyone next time.
Yes, thank you all for listening.
Thank you all for coming, and all is love.
Yeah, right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ginny.